Good morning, everyone. Yeah, the Memorial Day coming up tomorrow, felt it definitely very appropriate to explore that a little bit today. Really, it's a time of expressing gratitude. Memorial Day is when we remember the people who died serving their country. Veterans Day is we remember all the people who served, but Memorial Day is particularly for those who died, remembering and honoring those who sacrificed their lives for the sake of their country. This kind of living for a higher purpose. Tomorrow we'll be celebrating Memorial Day. In 2000 they began encouraging people during the day, because a lot of us will be barbecuing or picnic or having fun outside or whatever, and shopping because there's Memorial Day sales, or to let's not forget the meaning of that day. And so encourage people at 3 o'clock, set your phone, set an alarm to go off at 3 o'clock, and just take a moment of remembrance in the afternoon at 3 o'clock. Just to remember those who died for the sake of the country. So this is a verse that's used a lot to affirm the sacrifice of the martyrs. This is from Luke. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. So in the military, this is often, and particularly in war, what happens. And so I think it's really important that we value the memory of those people who sacrificed for us. Just last week, I shared about participating in one of the military funerals, one that was ceremony that was done, and so beautiful. I just say it again, just all the components of it. There was a 3-gun salute, and then the shells, 3 of those shells were given to the survivor, the spouse, or the children, whatever it was, and told her these shells represent duty, loyalty, and country. And then they played taps, the bugle song that signifies that they've left the battlefield for the final time. And then the coffin is draped with an American flag, and very beautifully and tenderly they fold up that flag and then offer that flag to the surviving spouse. Very, very touching and moving to honor and remember those who have served. Honestly speaking, it's tragic. So much death happens because of war. It's heartbreaking. And so not to have a sense of the meaning and value of those lives makes it even much more tragic. So there's deep meaning to each of these young people, men and women, mostly who are young people, who died and their sacrifice. So I want to look at this from a unificationist perspective. When we think about this Memorial Day, it's so important that we understand the meaning and value of these lives that were sacrificed. So it starts with our understanding the whole purpose of history, God's absolute commitment to bringing healing and restoration to the world. And especially as unificationists, we want to affirm that God is not a distant God just watching human beings go on their path and suffering. No, God is a loving parent that suffers with each one of God's children that dies, especially in dying in war and the sacrifice, and how many young lives cut short. Most of the soldiers in war between 18 and 25 years old. Younger than all of us here, having lived their lives. So when we understand that God's work and commitment to the province of restoration and healing, that all of these wars and all these conflicts are a process of separating good and evil, making a foundation for building a good world. And we understand, and why it's so important that we study the principle, that we understand what God's ideal is. This world of conflict is not God's desire, is not God's ideal. And understanding that the ideal builds from the family and expands the community and the society of world of people who know and experience God as their loving heavenly parent, who care for them, who loves us, each one of us. And understanding the process of restoration is all about bringing God's children, everyone, no one left behind, back to God's heart, back to God's realm. So it's important when we think on the past that we honor. There's been so many sacrifices that have been made in the past. And it's easy in our lives. Honestly, our lives are really so comfortable. You know, the struggles and difficulties we have, they're minor compared to the suffering of so many people around the world, but especially the people of history. And to remember those sacrifices, to realize and remember that we stand on a foundation of what so many other people sacrificed for us. And again, I just, it's from a number of times in speeches just reminded, it was young people who died in most wars. It was young people who hadn't hardly even started their life. And their lives were cut short. How painful is that? And to honor those patriots who lived for something higher than themselves, sacrificed for the sake of their nation, and even saints at the world level who sacrificed for the world. So when we think about Memorial Day and we think about God's providence, it all comes back down to us, each one of us, and our own mission to take up the providence of restoration and healing. And beginning in our own lives, in our own families, in our relationship within our families, with the people in our community, the people around us, and in the larger world. God has so much hope for each one of us that we can be people who appreciate and value the sacrifices that went before us, and that we, in our lives, show a commitment to bringing healing and restoration. So I want to just kind of bring this together in reading from the Divine Principle and its conversation about wars, and particularly in the last wars of this last 100 years. This is from the section of the Divine Principle called the preparation for the second advent of the Messiah in the province of restoration. And this is particularly talking about the Third World War. So let me read. The First and Second World Wars had the providential purpose of dividing the globe into the communist world and the democratic world. Afterward, yet another war must take place to bring about their unification. This conflict is the Third World War. It is inevitable that the Third World War take place. However, there are two possible ways it may be fought. One way is to bring Satan's side to surrender is through armed conflict. However, at the conclusion of the conflict, there should come an ideal world in which all humanity is to rejoice together. This can never be built by merely defeating enemies in battle. So important, this understanding here is that our mission, even in being the victors in a war or in a battle, is to love the enemy and to bring healing and restoration. The Divine Principle continues. Afterward, they must be brought into submission internally, that everyone may be reconciled and rejoice sincerely from the bottom of their hearts. Both the victors and the vanquished need to come together and unite in heart. To accomplish this, there must come a perfect ideology which can satisfy the desires of the original nature of all people. So for us as unificationism, it's the unification ideal and thought that's at the core. It's that ideology that can bring together enemies with the commitment not just to destroy the enemy, but to bring the enemy into unity. So that's if there's actually a hot war, a physical war, which is not God's first desire at all. And it shouldn't be the desire for any of us, that more people die tragically without having a chance to fulfill and experience the fullness of their lives. So, the principle continues. The other way this war may be fought is as a wholly internal, ideological conflict without the outbreak of armed hostilities, to bring Satan's world to submission and unification in a short time. People are rational beings. Therefore, a perfect, unified world can be established only when people submit to one another and participate in unification through a profound reawakening. As we often hear in morning devotion, this is about voluntary surrender of the enemy. Not being forced or coerced, but because of the change of heart. And most powerfully, because of the effect of unconditional love and caring. Allows people to surrender and to give up their position. So, the principle continues. By which of these two ways will the Third World War actually be fought? It depends upon success or failure in carrying out the human portion of responsibility. That's us, right? That's us. So it depends on us. Whether we fulfill and are able to attend God and make the conditions that prevent that kind of physical war, but also that lead the way to that genuine unification and bringing together of enemies, the people on both sides of a conflict. So, to conclude, I just want to bring it together, because the power that we have to bring unification, the power we have to move forward in the face of the many difficulties and challenges that we have in life, it comes from us remembering the sacrifices of those who went before us and honoring those sacrifices and realizing that we inherit the benefit of the sacrifices they made. So this is not just about soldiers. In our lives, we have to honor the fact that we inherit so much from even our ancestry. Often when we study the principle, we talk about that we inherit the sins of our forefathers, right? Sometimes we forget that we also inherit the merit and blessing from them. And something for us to always be grateful for. Many of us, in this country came here as immigrants. Left a difficult and challenging situation to come here. We inherit the merit of even being in America at this time. And then even at the level of society, how many people sacrificed? Especially people like the first responders, like firemen, who run into a burning building to try to save people. The police who stand on the front line many times in difficulties. The people who lived and even sacrificed their families and for the sake of benefiting the larger society. Honoring and appreciating those people. And then, especially at this time like Memorial Day, remembering the patriots who sacrificed, lived beyond their own self. Rather than their own selfish purpose, they sacrificed themselves in order to protect their nation, to protect a higher purpose. And then even at the highest level, those saints who lived beyond their own nation, but lived for the sake of the world. We stand on such a rich foundation. And if we forget that, if we ignore that, if we don't honor that foundation, we're like a boat that's adrift. Because that's our anchor, that's our strength, is knowing and valuing all that we have received and being grateful. Having that grateful heart so that as we move forward not just on our own, but we move forward on a rich foundation. So let's be grateful, right? For everything, especially grateful for those who sacrificed that we could live in the kind of world and environment that we have today. So I want to conclude with this from the Cheonsongyeong. Each of you needs to know clearly that you sprang from past ages and that you are called to build the future. Also, countless saints and sages shed their blood to bring you where you are today. And they are working even now behind the scenes, hoping you will increasingly develop this consciousness. So we inherit from our lineage, from the society that we live in, from the martyrs, of the patriots and saints who have sacrificed at every level. So let's build something good. Adieu? Amen. So please join me in prayer. Father, Mother God, we thank you so much. Today we're preparing to honor those who sacrificed and gave their lives for the sake of their nation and their country as we remember Memorial Day tomorrow. Heavenly Parent, we know that there's so many people who have sacrificed so much and that your heart grieves in pain for each one of those lives that were cut short. And yet your determination is to bring healing and restoration and liberation to even those who had such a short physical life. That your healing and restoration begins here on earth with us, but will multiply through the spirit world to liberate those, that they can know that they are loved, appreciated, that they can feel from our own hearts and our own actions that we value them so much. Heavenly Parent, as we come before you today, preparing for Memorial Day, we also want to open up our hearts to be always grateful for the many sacrifices you and those who have gone before us have made so that we could stand in this position. Heavenly Parent, help us overcome the many complaints and hurts and things that distract us from being truly grateful and being people who multiply your love and healing in the world around us. So, Heavenly Parent, we reflect on ourselves and determine ourselves anew to be sons and daughters who can bring joy to you and bring healing to the world. We offer ourselves to you together.